So I'm going to start this evening by coming down into child's pose, just literally for a moment. Stretch out the spine a little bit. Down. And take some deep breaths into the body. The head may or may not be touching the floor, but we're literally going to be down here for half a minute or so. And we'll lift the head, come forwards onto the forearms, and we'll come straight into Sphinx pose. So we're going to allow the legs to ease away, boot laces down, feet out nice and wide. Let the belly soften, elbows underneath the shoulders, and then we actually let the chest sink down, the shoulders rise up. Try and let them rise up rather than around directly around the ears. And let the belly be very soft. And you may or may not be feeling a compression in the lower back. I certainly am. Those lower back muscles are a little bit tired this evening. So we're very much appreciating a rest, but it does take a bit of effort to let go. So finding the confidence to let yourself sink. And it's not as if you're going to fall anywhere. So it's strange that we find it a little bit difficult to let go. Notice that my hands are just facing inwards. They can be facing down. You can bring the hands together into a prayer shape, whatever's easiest for the forearms and your elbows. And then going to bring the feet together onto the center line. And taking half frog to one side. So bring the chin down to the floor. The hands underneath the chin. You can utilize the forehead as well. Whatever feels more comfortable in the neck and the shoulders. Allow yourself to wriggle the shoulders out a little bit. There's always a little bit lower to go in these poses. And then we'll take the right knee out to the side, 90 degrees. Just lengthen the leg out so the shin follows the line of the mat, toes point out. And breathe easily, just letting the lower hip or the front hip sink towards the ground. So at this moment, the pelvis is kind of tilted, lifting on the right side. And we're just going to try and let that sink down to the ground using body weight, the gravity, and see if we can let the groin get a little closer to the floor on that side. And we'll bring the legs back up and move it across the other side. So we're not spending a lot of time this evening in this pose. Sometimes we can be here for 3 or 4 minutes. This evening we're keeping it short. We have other things to do to amuse ourselves. Slowly bring the leg back onto the mat. Now, this is where it gets a little bit confusing because I'm going to take a second Sphinx pose, which if you wanted to, you could take into seal pose, which would require you to place the hands to the floor and then bring the elbows away from the floor. So you lift up a lot higher. And it moves the compression point a little bit in the spine. But if you find that that's difficult, it's not comfortable, makes breathing tricky, you're not able to relax the muscles, then probably isn't the pose to be doing. It's better to come back into Sphinx pose. The seal pose is really there for people that are a little bit more hypermobile in the lower back and can bring the hands really close into the body. So almost approaching the ridiculous point of being vertical with the torso and the legs out behind you. For most of us, the average gap in the spine means that Sphinx pose is pretty much what we want to be. And just exploring the limits, so wriggling very gently through the hips. It's not really noticeable from the outside, but I'm using that technique just to kind of loosen off the lower back muscles a little bit more. Like an invisible jiggle. And we let ourselves come down to the ground. We're going to keep the head in the same end of the mat and roll onto our spine and bring the heels in towards your bottom as you take your arms out wide. You'll need to leave a little bit of space with props. And we're just going to come into a gentle spinal twist. And you can, if you want to, bring a flat block underneath the back of the head if that feels more comfortable in the shoulders. Let both legs roll over towards the left side. And you can keep the head looking directly towards the sky if that's easier in the neck and the shoulders. If turning the head the opposite way is available to you and it feels easy and nice, then go for it. Otherwise, you can just stay with the face pointing directly towards the sky. Now, with a bit of luck, the bottom leg is able to sink all the way to the ground, but the top leg might be still hanging around in the sky a little bit. That's not a problem. If, however, your bottom leg is not touching the floor, that's okay as well. If your bottom leg is able to touch the ground and your top leg touches the other thigh, that is also perfectly okay. Just as we have differences in the spine, we have differences in our hips, muscles, and joints alike. Use the knees back to the center. Let ourselves realign if we need to. Reset, and then gently let the legs rolling over to the other side as you exhale is usually a nice way to do it. And you might find differences between one side of the body and the other in terms of where you get to. Just enjoy the fact that you're different on each side of your body. Nearly all of us are. Bring the knees back to the center, take a little breath. Put the knees in towards the body. A very simple hug. And then we'll roll onto our right side. Hands to press into the floor, and we'll come up onto all fours. So we're back facing the front of the mat. Also, I'm going to either move my bricks close into the front of the mat or take the bolster up to the front of the mat, just ready for some dragons. Once you've done that, come into your all fours position with the hands underneath the shoulders. We'll take a little breath. We'll bring the right foot forwards, keep the hands on the floor, and then just slide the back leg as far back as I can. I'm going to try and keep the front knee roughly over the ankle. You might want to take your foot a little bit further out and your knee a little bit further apart than you would normally when you're in lunge. And find a nice place for that knee that's on the ground. Some people like to keep the toes tucked under. It feels a bit more comfortable. Other people go the other way. This is our baby dragon. You can be on the knuckles if getting the hands down to the floor is a problem. I would avoid trying to stay on the fingertips too much. You can put a little bit of weight through them. Head position, just find a comfortable place. Try and relax the shoulders away from the ears. And let the hips sink. And we'll slowly move out of that. And we'll cross it over to the opposite leg. So just bring in the knees in. You can lift the hands, move the limbs around however feels comfortable. Then get to a position where you can lengthen the back leg away. Knuckles or hands to the floor, your choice. If the knee is moving forwards of the ankle, it's not a problem. Preferably not going past the toes. So as you sink down, you'll probably move forwards a little bit as well. Then you might find that you get to different places on each side of the body. Partly because the ribs are a different shape. So if your ribs are sitting against your thigh, that's going to make a difference. And I'll move from there back to E4. And this time we're going to take the right foot to the outside. Now I tend to keep the heel on the mat, but turn the toes out to the side a little bit. Again, I lengthen the back leg away. And then the bolster is going to be there so that I can bring my forearms down easily. Now, if you're able to get down lower, you can just have the bricks flat to the floor. That will give you an opportunity to get deeper, or you can go right down to the floor if you find that comfortable. Again, finding a happy place for the foot in relation to the knee on the back leg, and trying to let the hips sink down. Again, that downward motion might push you forwards a little bit, so try to keep the elbows in front of the shoulders if you can. Again, we're letting the torso sink down as well. A bit like we did with the Sphinx pose. We're trying to let the body ease. From there, before us. We'll do exactly the same again. So I tend to move the bolster out so that I've got space to find where I want to be and allow myself plenty of space to move in. Roll the bolster back under. And then slowly bring the forearms on. Put the elbows out a little wider than the shoulders. And just letting myself sink down. So another thing that can happen with the front leg and the foot is some people, the foot is going to be flat to the floor. Some people are going to roll out to the side. I tend to be rolling on the side on this leg and flat on the opposite side. So wherever you find yourself is good. And again, being aware of differences, but not being concerned by them. We'll leave ourselves out of that as well. Just bring that bolster all the way to the front of the mat and sitting down. Now, I'm going to take deer pose. So you're going to need the block on all fours and the knees are about hip distance apart. You swing the feet over towards the right side of the mat. And I'm just going to place the shin of the right leg over the back of just behind the heel, the opposite leg. Allow myself to move the block back underneath, and as I sit down, I'll slide the shin out a little bit further into the arch of the foot. So I come down gently, the back foot points out towards the back of the mat. Both knees are touching the ground. My hips are pretty much level in this direction from side to side, and hopefully forwards and backwards as well. You can use the left hand on the floor to help. Just get a little bit more directional movement down on this right hip. And lean forwards, move the block in front again, bring the knees back into that same position. Swing the feet over to the second side. Allow myself to just hook the foot over, bring myself down onto the blocks, and then adjust. Both knees onto the floor. Pretty much able to get both cheeks onto the block. I wouldn't be able to do that if I was using the floor. I would definitely be sitting on one cheek, and this knee would not be sitting on the ground either. So the block is useful because we want both legs attached to the floor. Again, the hand out to the right side to just help ease the pelvis into alignment. So the vertical line through the spine is achieved by moving the pelvis rather than pulling all the heads or the shoulders around. We're really trying to keep everything from sort of the bottom rib up as relaxed as possible. Okay, we'll bring ourselves back up onto all fours. And I'm going to take full version of this. So first of all, I'm going to take the knees wider apart than they were before. Across the left foot over and the right foot over outside. I'll just sit back onto the block. The knees are very much wider apart in this version. Before they were sort of on the mat, now they're pretty much the outside edges of the mat, which is what I want. To get the sitting bones nice and flat to the floor. I turn towards my left thigh, walk the fingers forwards to get low onto that side, and then walk hands around towards the front of the mat. Now you can let the head come down. You can actually bring the bolster underneath the body if you want to give your whole body a little bit of support. You could bring a brick underneath the forehead, or you can bring the hands underneath. Now maybe that you're on the elbows and you want to bring the bolster in and then have your elbows and the forearms resting on that. So you're a little higher. Now this is quite strong in the hip joints, with the legs being more opened out. When we come out of this, we'll press down into the hands and lift ourselves directly back up. So we're going to untangle the legs, which might mean a little bit of leaning out to the side. Just check your hips still feel like they're attached. Come back up onto fours again. Keep the knees wide apart, split both feet off. Allow yourself to sit back. Put the toes underneath, get that nice wide stance through the groins. Make sure your buttocks are both sitting on the blocks. Legs are spread out as far as we can. We'll turn gently into the right leg. Walk the fingers forwards. See how close we can get to getting the body onto the thigh. If we're able to get all the way down, great. And then once you've arrived and it feels safe, you walk gently into the center, just checking out that your inner groin, hip feel comfortable with the idea of putting pressure in this way. And then choosing your props to support you so you can relax into the pose. So lots of opportunity for muscles deep inside the hip to be discovered. Enjoy the challenge of letting go. I'm going to slowly lift back up out of that, coming directly up. Untangle the legs, put them out in front a little bit as we move the blocks out of the way. Now I'm going to take child's pose, but I'm going to take the knees wide again, not as wide or as strained as they were before in that last pose, but I'm going to use the bolster down the line of the mat. Let the knees find a comfortable place, and then just bring that bolster underneath my body and lay down. So you can turn the head whichever direction it feels comfortable. You don't have to have the hands on the bolster. You can do similar if you don't have a bolster, just by putting two bricks on top of each other and then bring that underneath the sternum. It's not as powerful, obviously, as a bolster. And from here, I'm going to use the hands to press down into the floor. Set myself up gently. I'm going to move the bolster behind now. And I'm going to find my trusty block again. Bring the knees more in line with each other. Take a little breath. I'm going to lean over just a little bit as the right foot comes forwards. Drop the block underneath as I roll back. I can get my sitting bones to touch. I'm going to lift the left knee off the ground just for a fraction, and then use my hand to maneuver my ankle to the outside of the hip, and then let that left knee back down to the floor. So now the hip is sitting up out to the side of my hip a little bit. And you can keep the knee high, or you can lengthen it out. It's really kind of your personal choice. And take the hands behind, take a little breath, and slowly start to tilt the pelvis down and let the body follow. So I want to try and bring the elbows down onto the bolster. I do want to keep this knee of my left leg flat to the floor. So if you feel that rise away, then you need to lift yourself back up. Now, keeping deliberately my chin in towards my chest, and at the moment, I'm kind of sitting on the bolster and on my elbows at the same time, which is a very comfortable place to be. If, having been down here for a while, you feel you can come lower, you can do, but if you start to notice that your chest starts to arch up towards the sky, and or your knee comes away from the ground, your shin is not able to stay on the floor, then you have gone further than you need. The point of the pose is to open up the front hip flexors. So we need the pelvis to be more neutral. If your chest and your body is arching up, usually your pelvis is doing the same, and we need the pelvis to drop the back of the pelvis down to the floor rather than lifting the front of the pelvis towards the sky. Or as it would be known, anterior tilt. The reason we don't want anterior tilt is because we're actually trying to take that out of our posture later on when we stand up. By doing this now, I'm just lengthening out those particular muscles. And we'll start to press the elbows down, draw the belly in a little bit, and let ourselves lift up. And we're going to see if we can move gently over to the other side. So we're going to bring that right foot in. I'm going to lean forwards and press down through the foot, move the block over to the other side, ready. Come up onto all fours. You may or may not want to stretch out the left leg a little bit. And then bring that foot forwards. Block back behind where you think your sitting bone's going to end up. And then if you need to, you're going to lift the knee, take hold of the ankle and just ease it out a little bit to the side. So the knee's pointing forwards, the heel is the outside of the hip. And again, that top leg, personal choice. And then we're going to drop back of the pelvis down, the chin towards the chest, ease our way down. And again, you might find that easier on one side of the body than the other. You could potentially have a tighter hip flexors here, which will give you the sensation of having a lot more pull down sort of the middle, kind of the belly of that muscle. It's coming from this being tight in this region up here. And we'll start to draw the belly in a little bit, press the shoulders back, start that initial lift, get the hands underneath and bring ourselves up. We'll move the bolster towards the back of the mat. Not as easy as I expected it to be. And then just allow those legs to untangle themselves. We'll take the block just behind the bottom. I have it now going landscape across there. Draw the heels underneath and roll over the ankles onto the knees. We'll take the feet about the same distance apart. So have a little look through the thighs as the block, tuck the toes underneath, and then just simply sit back into a squat with the heels on the block if you need them. If you don't need them, you can just move them out of the way. Now, we've still got the feet pointing pretty much forwards, and I'm going to take a little time to get comfy. And then if I can, very gently start to wiggle the feet out to the side as I let the legs open up. And you'll notice that I'm kind of sinking through the middle of the gap where the legs have opened. And from here, I'm going to take the right hand out and place the palm onto the floor. So lean into that side of the body. The arm and the leg are pressing against each other. I'm going to rotate the chest open to the left as I take my left hand onto my heart, look out past my shoulder, and then extend the hand out towards the sky. So I'm really just following the line of the chest with both hands out to the side. Trying to get a little bit of length in the spine as I lean over. So the feeling of lifting up out of the pelvis. That will draw the abdominal muscles in a little bit as well. I'll feel them coming in to help support. I'll bring the hands back down to the floor. Center of the spine. Take a little breath. Allow myself to walk the hand out to the left and then place the palm to the ground. So I get that little bit of lean going. Hand comes onto the heart on the right side. I turn the chest to open up. When it feels comfortable, extend the hand out. And bring the hand back down to the floor again. Line the spine up. We're going to take the hands forwards, lean in just a little bit so I can lift the heels off of the ground, sorry, off of the block. Take a breath from here. Keep the fingers on the floor, lift the hips up, and just turn the feet off of the block. And then just move the block out to the side. So I'm in a forward fold. Allow myself to spread the toes a little bit. Softness in the knees. The ribs and thighs can get familiar with each other. I'll take the hands from the floor onto the hips and then gently behind the back of my pelvis as I interlace my hands. Roll the shoulder blades together into the center line of my body, in towards the back of my shoulders. And then slowly take the hands towards the sky as I breathe in, squeezing the shoulder blades together even more. And seeing if I can let the hands move gently over towards the front of the mat. Now, it can be very deceptive. I know that my hands are nowhere near the floor, but it does feel like my hands or my arms are not parallel to the ground. They're a little bit higher than that, but I would sort of say, 10 or 15 degrees. I know if I look back in the video, I probably just about got my hands lifting up towards the ceiling. It's interesting how our sense of where we are on the mat and reality might be a bit different when we can't see. Now take a little breath from here and let the hands come back down onto the hips. Bring the hands forwards a little bit, and put even more bend into the knees, and then bring the hands onto the thighs, draw the belly in and exhale up. So keeping the spine nice and long to lift, and just letting the blood rush back down from the inversion. So I might feel a little bit woozy for a second. Shake out the legs a little bit. Shake out the arms. Anything else you can think of that would benefit from that. And then we're going to move in towards the front of the mat. Feet are about hip distance apart. Bring the hands in towards the heart as I breathe in. Exhale over, your legs into a forward fold. And as I arrive, I'm going to take the right foot to the back into a lunge and drop the heel onto the center line. So getting ready for warrior two, bring the hands onto the front thigh to lift yourself up. So it's easy on the spine, and turn the body to the long side of the mat. Take the arms out as you inhale into familiar shape, and then draw the hands behind, interlacing the hands, squeezing the shoulder blades together. You can then start to rotate your body towards the front of the mat, keeping the back foot down. So press into the outside edge of that foot, lean over the front thigh, keeping the knee over the ankle. Take a second breath, squeeze the shoulder blades together as you drop your head down to the floor and move yourself into humble warrior. And we'll bring the hands to the ground gently. Spin the back heel, step carefully into that forward fold. Let the ribs and the thighs meet, bend the knees, bring the hands onto the hips, long spine, and use the hands to ease our way back up. Bring the hands in towards the heart again as we breathe in. Exhale over, drawing the belly in, taking the weight into the toes. Hands to the floor as we fold in, and we take the left foot back into our lunge. We drop the heel onto the center line and get prepared for warrior two. We bring the hands onto the front thigh to lift. Open the body to the side, taking the hands out wide. Bring the hands behind the back as you exhale. Draw the hands down to the floor and squeeze the shoulder blades. On the inhale, rotate the chest and hips. On the next exhalation, you start to come forwards, pressing the back foot into the floor. Take another breath on the thigh, and then start to lift the hands to the sky as you exhale and fall down. Ease the hands to the floor again. Taking a little breath as we spin the heel on the back foot into our forward fold. Rest the ribs on the thighs. Bend the knees, bring the hands onto the thighs, lengthen the body forwards, and just press our way up gently. This time we'll take the hands out wide as we inhale. Bring the hands into the heart and exhale down to the floor into our final forward fold. Stepping back gently with both legs. We'll bring the knees down to the floor. So we're in tabletop, and we'll move into cat-cow, which roll the chest forwards. Tilt the pelvis. Press into the hands. Spread those back muscles out. Draw the breath forwards. Tilting the pelvis a little towards the sky, and tilting the pelvis the opposite way to start that ripple through the spine. Now, I, like many teachers, suggest drawing the breath in as you come forwards and exhaling on the way out, but there are people who will find it much more natural to breathe the opposite way. They'll be able to contract the abdominal muscles in more effectively. The whole thing will just feel more comfortable. So if you are one of those people that's breathing forwards, not really serving you, then simply breathe the other way. As long as we continue to breathe in and out, it's going to be effective. We'll come back into a neutral spine, which is lifting the chest away from the floor a little bit. So you'll feel the shoulder blades spread out, the belly draws in a touch. We tuck the toes of the right foot underneath and slide the leg to the back of the mat. And on the inhale, we're going to just draw the toe out to the side, 90 degrees to the mat, place the sole of the foot to the floor. And then I'm going to ask you to press down into the shin of the leg that's connected to the ground underneath you, and press into that outside edge of the foot that's out to the side of you. Press into the hands. Try and lift the body away from the floor. Now it's not actually going to lift, but it's like we're trying to. And then we'll release, and you'll feel all the muscles let go. And we'll bring the foot back and bring the knee in. We'll do the same with the left side. Sliding out, sliding the foot to the side. And there's a little press into the floor with the shin, the hands, and the foot. You feel all of the muscles connecting, engaging, and working together. Remember to breathe. You only hold it for 30 seconds or so, but it's quite strong contraction pushing away from the ground. Makes you realize how much we're sitting with joints. This is all muscle work, and it's using everything. And then we'll slowly release. Slide the foot back, bringing the knees back underneath us. I can take the feet out to the side and sit back down onto my bottom. And move my bolster out of the way. Sorry, block out of the way, and bring my bolster back in close to the side of me. I'm going to sit onto the front edge of the sitting bones and Dandasana. So I'm going to bring the hands onto the thighs, flex the feet back and lengthen out through the heels, and try and sit as upright as I can, rolling the shoulders back. You can have the hands on the floor, but if you're able to, see if you can do this evening with the hands on the thighs. Okay, we put our hands behind now. Now we'll keep the chin in towards the chest, but we're going to roll the shoulders back and we'll lift the chest up, heart towards the sky, pressing down into the hands, pressing the shoulders back down towards the floor a little bit. Still got the legs out in front and we're lengthening out through the heels, toes still flexed towards us. So lifting the spine up out of the pelvis, as if the gentle arc that you can imagine in your spine is getting bigger and bigger. And we'll release. I'm going to sit up and just take the bolster underneath the back of the thighs. And in a moment, I'm going to lie back down onto the floor. So I'm going to use my hands to support, bring the feet in close. But once I get into position, I'll actually bring the soles of the feet together and let the back of the knees sit onto the outside edges of the bolster. So we've got this nice supported Baddha-Konasana look, and we're going to use that for our final restorative pose this evening. I'm going to roll gently down to the floor and allow the feet to come together. Move the bolster into a place that feels really comfortable to support the legs, and then roll the crown of the head down, or the back of the head down to the floor. Hands out to the side, palms facing up, and then just spend a little bit of time relaxing down into the ground. The spine is not going to be necessarily in a neutral position to start with. The pelvis might still be a little bit tilted. You might want to lift the buttocks up a couple of times and get yourself into a position where you can lengthen the spine out a little bit. Leave up to your imagination as to many ways that you could achieve lengthening the spine out while staying in the position. And then when you think you're as flat as you can be, you can just let everything relax. Jaw, eyes, and everything all the way down to your toes. We've got about 4 minutes here. Enjoy the rest, quietness. We'll begin to stretch the fingers and toes. Breathe a little deeper and begin to move through wrists and ankles. Enjoy a gentle stretch. And then ease the knees in towards your body. Sliding the feet over the bolsters and then letting the knees ease in towards your chest. A gentle hug. Take a breath in. Roll over to the right side. And on the next exhale, use the hands to press into the floor to lift up. We're back into seated posture. It's time to sit up tall, bring the hands in towards the heart, take a breath. As you close your eyes, bow the head, draw the belly to the spine. Feel your practice as you bow to the floor. As the breath comes back into the body, you can lift the spine, the head, and open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed. Have a lovely rest of the evening. And I'll see you on the mat again soon.